Welcome back to Newsday. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Now to some African affairs. There's apprehension in Liberia as violence broke out ahead of Tuesday's presidential election, with clashes between President Weah supporters and members of the opposition reaching a new height. No official toll was available on Sunday evening, but journalists counted at least 5 men with injuries, some with large gashes on their heads. Supporters of former football star Weah's political group, the Coalition for Democratic Change, and members from the opposition threw stones at each other, and in response, police fired tear gas. The main political parties have pledged peaceful polls, but the deaths of 3 people in clashes last month between rival political camps have fueled fears of electoral violence in the country. Well, joining us now to discuss the Liberian election coming up on Tuesday are African Affairs analyst Dr. Victor Okhai, as well as an EU observer who is on the ground in Liberia, that's Elvis Akpobi. Great to have you both on Newsday. A very warm welcome. I'll start with you, Dr. Victor. Already concerning developments taking place on the ground, what is the likelihood of a free and fair election taking place this week?
This election is very, very important. In the sense that, in a way, it poses some sort of existential threat, the outcomes to Liberia's very existence. The reason is, after the UN left, this is the first real test, the UN peacekeeping force. This is the first real test of Liberians on their own, being able to transit and do that hopefully peacefully. Right now, the opposition is fierce in wanting power at all costs. Don't forget that Liberia as a country, by the very nature of its makeup and how it was formed, you have those who consider themselves the locals and the ones that were brought back home, who are like the elites and all that. So you have the homeboys and the, So that divide is there, and those tribal lines, and the fact that George Weah himself, there was a lot of hope when he came in, but as you know, and as he has said himself, across, it's not just in Liberia, across the continent, with COVID and all that, and he, by the way, he successfully navigated them through it, that there have been challenges, to the economies of many countries. So Okhai knows that this is his last chance, so he'll do anything, to grab power, because at his age, I don't see him coming back after 6 years, at the age of 84, 84, to come and contest again. Kumin and the rest of them obviously will have to wait and see, but the fact that even they could not reach an agreement together just makes it's like everyone is just desperate for this. But we're hopeful that common sense will prevail and that their sense of history will make them, all the citizens, because they witnessed a war. And I'm hoping that the sense of history will whip some common sense into them.
Oh, noted. Well, we'll come to you now, Elvis, in Liberia. I'm sure you heard what Dr. Okhai had to say about the sense of desperation that we're seeing amongst the candidates. Can you give us a sense of what you're witnessing on ground, whether it's what you're seeing with the electorate or those vying for power?
It's what I've noticed is the young people who are mostly the vehicles of violence in elections. They've been on ground, and as at yesterday, from what I saw that passion, enthusiasm to want to select the person that will decide how Liberia will look like in the next 6 years. For President George Weah, being an incumbent president, there are a vast opinion from my research they're saying that they expected more from him, but they didn't get that. Why the opposition itself, like the person at the studio they talked about it, that he knows he doesn't have page on his side. So, and we have a lot of international observers here to check what happened back in Liberia. But at the moment, there's peace. There's anxiety from mostly the young people who want to, participate in the electoral process. As of yesterday, it was recorded that they had clash and someone died. And it's always young people are always the victim of this violence. But I pray there's a peaceful election and peaceful transition in Liberia.
Of course, we all do pray for that. And let's take a look at some of the issues that we are looking at throughout this election. We know it's just been 20 years since the Civil War. And of course, the establishment of an economic and war crimes court is one of the biggest issues that George Weah has contended with, because it's one of the key promises that got him into office. And he hasn't delivered. Many feel that his inability to deliver this economic and war crimes court has led to the creation of a culture of impunity in Liberia. Is this going to cost him the election? I'll come to you, Dr. Victor.
From what I've seen, it might cost him the election. But our African elections and the power of incumbency is the one that has relationship with the international bodies who are always interested in anywhere we have natural resources in Africa. Liberia is blessed with a lot of natural resources. So he has the financial wherewithal. From what I see, I can see I've seen his campaign posts. I've seen the large chunk of young people who are being mobilized to support him. But my engagement with some young folks in Liberia is that they expected more from him in the last 6 years. If someone was giving an example of the road network in Liberia, if they're coming into the country, Morovia, which is meant to have a good landscape, the road network there is not too good. Even when I came into this country, it took a long for me to get to my destination. There are issues of corruption and other impunity in his administration, but I think the vote of the masses will decide who becomes, or if he's going to continue, or if they will have a new phase in Liberia.
We certainly hear you, Elvis. But Dr. Okhai, based on what we've seen on ground in terms of the pre-election situation, violence in some cases, is that your concern? Are you concerned that might also happen tomorrow?
African elections are generally replete with violence to varying degrees. It's bound to happen. I mean, you can't run away from it. Because people will disagree based on who they're supporting. So it gives some cause for concern, but I don't think it's going to be out and out, violence. I don't see that happening. What we have to be concerned about is making sure that the elections are free and fair in the various counties, because there are strongholds and people want to make sure that they can deliver on their counties and on their, to deliver their candidates. So I'm not too concerned about the violence. There will be, but not too much. I don't think so. But yeah, so I don't think there'll be much violence. That's not, going to be of much concern.
Now, of course, on watchdogging this election, yes. Dr. Nevers Mumba, who's a former vice president of Zambia, has made headlines because, of course, he was a subject of controversy when he led the SADC observer mission to the Zimbabwean election and led the controversial position where, of course, we, as a regional body, everybody expected SADC to rubber stamp the election in Zimbabwe, and he questioned the free and fairness of that election. Now, once he was named the head of the AU observer mission to Liberia, opposition parties across Africa celebrated because they felt that this is the man who's currently advocating for a transparent election as opposed to creating rubber stamp dynamics with these African organizations and their relationships with incumbent politicians. Do you think this one man, Dr. Nevers Mumba, former vice president of Zambia, who was able to stir things up and create a little bit of transparency in the Zimbabwean election, do you think that his impact will be felt? Do you think that there will be some sort of, a little bit of pushback, at least, or at least a little bit of restraint, sorry, that's the word, from the incumbent, because he's a man who's coming with a reputation of ensuring that nothing slips under his watch? Well,
we have to admit the fact that he's not the only one that's going to be the head of a delegation. We have, there's AU, there's EU, there are so many observers. I don't know what difference he will make. Yes, he'll raise, if there's anything, he will speak. as he has been known to, especially now that he's been seen in that light, obviously. But I think what we should be concerned about, if you ask me, is I don't even think, and if you ask my opinion, I don't think this election will end in the first round. Because to win this election, you need at least 50%. And the way it is, it would have been maybe a little easier, but now it's a bit difficult because if Cumming and what's his name now, Okhai had agreed to work together up till this point, then it would have been very difficult for the incumbent. But as it is, I think it's going to go into the second round, and that's where I see a lot of the politicking taking place and where the power of incumbency will take place. Well, the man with the reputation that is coming, he can only see, as we know, you only see what they want you to see. Quite frankly, we've seen that happen in this country as well. You know, I don't know if that is going to change the results of the election either one way or another.
Well said. Well, Elvis, will come to you again. We in Liberia, and we understand that the incumbent president is quite confident that his performance will be enough to secure re-election. He's boasted about free tuition scheme for undergraduates, increased electricity access and reduced cost, and embarked on several road construction projects. He seems to be bragging about these. But from what you're seeing on ground, do you get a sense of contentment from Liberians that this will actually be an opportunity for them to reward the incumbent president with another term?
No, from what I've seen on back here in Liberia, presently I'm at the headquarters of the Federation of Liberian Youth, where we have a situation room at the moment. I'm monitoring what they're doing here. But from what I've seen, a handful of people are disappointed, mostly peers. But you know, the young folks who are largely voters are gullible. And yesterday, what I noticed, I saw a large amount of young people campaigning and supporting the incumbent president. That's to tell you how we've felt, despite the complaint about the lack of good roads and the tuition fee fine. That's feasible. I heard a young person saying that, but still, they are not satisfied. They keep saying that the country is blessed with diamond and other natural resources, but it does not reflect in the landscape and the environment of the country. But still, the young folks, as usual, like we have it in Nigeria, they are still supporting his return. So for me, let the best person win. All we are clamoring for, all we are here to do is to make sure we have free, credible elections in Liberia, and there's peace before, during, and after the elections here in Liberia.
And still keeping with you, Elvis, in Liberia, besides the incident that you saw yesterday, how likely do you think that the authorities will be able to maintain the peace? Are tensions continuing to rise, or have things been doused down?
For now, things are being doused down, but young people, they are full of energy and were easily, manipulated. I saw a particular clip, which for me is a graphic clip. I just saw even before this interview, young people stoning their fellow young person to death. That's to tell you how far they can go. And these are still young persons who will complain that they don't have an enabling environment to thrive in Liberia. But when these two things clash, you find out that it's mostly young persons that are the victims of this violence. You hardly see old people getting involved in this. So I want to urge my Liberian folks to, participate towards the ballot and not the bullets ahead of this election.
Oh, so we hear you. Thank you so much for your insight, Elvis. We'll bring it back to you, Dr. Okhai. Based on what Elvis just disclosed about the activities of young voters, are you concerned that we might see cases of potential vote buying or even voter apathy based on the violence?
Okay, no, I don't see voter apathy. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot of mobilization.
Okay.
What the incumbent has cleverly done, I won't say cleverly, but what would stand to his advantage is that he has sort of strategically catered during the first tenure to that demographics of young people. I mean, undergraduates are getting free tuition. These are the potential voters. They are coming of age, and you cannot benefit from that and then say, you have not benefited from the government. okay? Especially in a country that is not so rich. Healthcare, and some of the things he has done. So he has, and something that's supposed to be a negative might also work in his favor. I'm sorry to be saying this, but this is what happens on the continent. Where they have been accusing him that a lot of corruption has been thriving, but you know that it is the same corrupt people that want to perpetuate him in government. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. Okay, these are the kind of people who will see black and call it white. So process of corruption might come to work in his favor, but it's not to say that it's going to be a tough fight. Don't forget, Okhai, but for his age, I would tell you outrightly that he will win. And he will almost certainly do that. But it's tough. The reason for that is simply that, don't forget, he went into a coalition. And one of the strongest, too, Yomi Johnson. Yomi Johnson is indigenous. He's from, so these are people he's from a place where you have like a majority, a large number of voters. It might be argued that he's not the one on the ballot. But, it depends on what he's promising the people, and these are areas that are largely agrarian, not in the capital. So if former agriculture minister, and he comes and says, my focus is in the area of agriculture and all that, it might resonate. But the biggest issue against him is age. Now, the young people don't want to put another Methuselah there for whatever it's worth. So, it's going to be a tough one. The voter buying, everybody will, if they can and get away with it, they will do it. If they can manipulate voters using whatever means, whether tribe or whatever, and get away with it, they would.
Now, this will be the first election in Liberia's 4 post-war elections that will, of course, not have the United Nations mission supporting the Electoral Commission. How much of an impact do you think this will make? Because, of course, we've seen that in the past that the presence of the United Nations has been central. It's been key. And one can even argue that some of the pre-election violence we're seeing is a result of the absence of the United Nations mission. What are some of the changes that you think we'll see in this election that we haven't seen in past elections? Okay, well, this is a test for sure, because they're on their own now. How do you manage it? Like every baby step, you falter, you fall, you rise again. I expect that it may not be as perfect as the last election, obviously, and you don't have Big Brother watching you. Like the United Nations forces that were on ground. But I have no doubt that, because they're working with Liberians, so they have the benefit of experience. So they will, they'll be able to pull it through. I'm not in any doubt about that. There might be, as we have agreed, pockets of violence here and there, skirmishes here and there, but the election will be successfully delivered. And there are observers on ground as well, so the government is going to be very careful. The opposition will have to also be careful, so I'm not too worried.
Okay. Well, Elvis, do you share Dr. Okhai's optimism? And my specific question is, he stated earlier that the election might not end in the first round. Do you think that that will be the case? Elvis, I'm speaking with you, by the way, or asking you, by the way.
Yes, I think that will be the case, because there is a school of thought that won't change. Like I said, the young people, and there is a school of thought that there is a section that want to, keep the president for a second term in office. And then from what I've observed, it has to do with and we don't have the UN observers that are not here to checkmate activities that will take place. All we crave for is and we are amplifying is for the young people to, subscribe to ways a peaceful elections. I pray and we get that.
Right, and as we're concluding, of course, George Weah's running mate, Jewel Howard Taylor, yes. Wife of Charles Taylor.
Yes.
How does this speak to Elvis? So very quickly, final question for you. Is this something that everybody's just glossing over? Because this looks like a very significant detail to those of us looking from the outside in.
Yes, the wife of the former president, Taylor, I think it's like a springboard to, stepping George come back because from what I noticed, my own opinion, she's a very receptive leader who's in sync with mostly the young people. I've been privileged to, have one or two meetings with her. And for me, they call her a mother back here in Liberia. So that's another strategy again in winning the young people over for Joshua.
Oh,
so it's an addendum for his victory.
Well said, Elvis. Doctor, you were nodding when Elvis was speaking.
Yes.
Would you like to add to that?
Yes. See, the choice of a vice presidential candidate is always very strategic. It's not an accident. People forget that Charles Taylor may be in jail, but believe me, he has his followers. Just like Yomi Johnson, none of them is innocent. Both of them are equally. Yes, Yomi Johnson is free today and all that, came to Nigeria, had covering and all that. But Charles Taylor is still, in spite of everything, he's still very much, loved by a section, respected by others. And his wife on the ballot beside George Weah is very significant. George Weah is smart and he knows why. He has fingers on the pulse and knows why he has chosen her. And like he rightly said, she's considered some sort of a mother, and she's not Charles Taylor, by the way. So, but although she has a pedigree, coming from that. And there are those who, I think that however it is, it checkmates what Okhai has in his partnership with Yomi Johnson. And it will work in his favor rather than against him.
All right. Well, doesn't matter if you're married to a man who's serving 50 years for crimes against humanity. You can still have your day as a vice president.
No, that's don't pipe. No. These are political calculations. It's like saying a Muslim ticket, and then you do your calculations. It's not about the rightness of it, but it's about
strategic.
Exactly. So that's what it is. So yeah.
Well, you want to go ahead? Thank you so much, gentlemen. African Affairs Analyst Dr. Victor Okhai and EU Observer Elvis Akpobi. We appreciate your time and insight here on Newsday. Thank you so much.